This video is sponsored by Core. Core is the new free game creation platform that lets you build, publish, and play games. It's an amazing platform to quickly get started designing, especially if you want to create a 3D multiplayer game. Pick a framework and start building your own games right away using thousands of free, high-quality music, sound, and art assets, all with no coding required. But if you really want to dig in, Core lets you create your own game logic using Lua. You can build games from scratch, or remix and reimagine content shared by other creators. And when it's time to publish, your game will go live on the Core platform with the click of a button. Right now, Core is hosting the Secret Spaces Game Jam along with extra credits. There's still plenty of time to join and use Core to make an amazing world that anyone can enjoy and explore, not to mention the $3,500 prize pool. Core is completely free, so be sure to check them out by clicking on the link in the description. Hey there, how's it going? When I tell people that I make games, they usually ask how long I've been doing it for. And how did you get started? Especially when I say that I never coded anything before I started making games. So this was my process of going from a bored artist to a game designer. Some quick background on me. For my day job, I'm a graphic designer working in advertising. I went to art school and I have a degree in photography. I like visual art a lot and I've enjoyed making it for a very long time. Around 2012 or so, I was really into Minecraft like the rest of the world was at that time. I made a custom sprite for a server I was playing on, and it was really exciting to be able to interact with my art as opposed to just looking at it. I'm known to like sensible challenges. So I started a project where I would release at least one new texture for Minecraft every day until I did the whole thing. That shouldn't be that hard, right? It was pretty hard actually. But I began to get a peek behind the curtain of how the game textures work, especially when I got into animations that had to have their values tweaked. Well, 418 consecutive days later, I was done. I was able to load up the game and everything I interacted with was all my artwork. To be 100% honest with you, I loved it. It was so cool. Everywhere I looked, I made that, and I made that, and that, and that, and that. Unfortunately, not too long after that, I kinda stopped playing Minecraft and didn't really have any other projects for a good couple of years. But that wow feeling kinda stuck. Fast forward to September of 2016, I just so happened to see a Humble Bundle for ClickTeam Fusion 2.5. It said it was a game engine. Now at this point, I was into playing games, so I had a vague understanding of what a game engine was, just not how it actually worked or functioned. But this game engine said you didn't need to know how to write code to make a game. And for me, the closest I'd ever come to writing code was updating some images in WordPress. So suffice it to say, none. I really liked having my art be interactable, and I wanted to try that again without the restriction of being in Minecraft. So I bought the Humble Bundle and decided to see if I'd be able to do something with it. I followed a beginner tutorial that I found on YouTube, and within about an hour or two, I had made a bare bones Flappy Bird clone with no art and the bare minimum of functionality. And I was so excited, seriously. The first time I pressed the button on my keyboard and that little box flapped up, the "that's awesome" feeling was pretty unreal. It's hard to describe, and I really don't have any other words for it other than, it's so cool. So I did this thing while following a tutorial, and I'm not going to lie, I just blindly followed along. At this point, I didn't actually understand how it all worked. I knew the concept of if this, then that, but this was the first time I had ever actually put that concept into practice. I continued to play around with Fusion for about another month or so, watching tutorials and getting the basic understanding of how events work. In the end, there was just a handful of things that I wasn't really a fan of with ClickTeam Fusion. And I figured if there's one engine where you could make a game without knowing how to code, there's got to be more. So I did a bunch of research and looked at a few different engines. My number one criteria was that I didn't want to be looking at walls of code or typing out tons of syntax for everything. I know that's the kind of thing a lot of people prefer, it just wasn't for me. After reading about and testing a couple different engines, I finally settled on Construct 2. It just worked the way I wanted it to, and the UX made sense to me. This began my obsession for the next year. All of my free time was spent watching and following tutorials to figure out how to do different things, and just poking at it to try and figure out what other things I could make it do. Because I was so new to this, I thought that everything I was making was pretty much garbage, and I just kept trying to do things better. I didn't know there was an indie game dev community at this point, so I wasn't talking to anybody about what I was doing. It was just me making things, showing them to my wife and daughter sometimes, and that's it. I had no feedback or input from anyone else that would know more than me or was into the same kind of things as me, and looking back, this is probably the worst thing I did while learning to make games. It stagnated my progress because I had no one to bounce ideas off of, and started to make me go a little crazy from not having anyone else to talk to about this thing I was spending so much time doing. During During this year, I was just making prototypes, small pieces of games to understand how they worked. I watched so many YouTube tutorials and bought a handful of Udemy courses. The person I learned the most from was Mentor, and I eventually followed the tutorial that he put on his channel about making your first platform game. I started following along and decided to change the art for the main character, because in all of this time that I'd been learning, I had yet to actually make my own art move on screen. You know, that whole thing that I kind of started all this to do, I'd been so preoccupied with just learning how to make something move, I hadn't really done any art to put into those things that are moving. So I drew my first tile set and character with animations. After I finished the tutorial, I was really proud. I wanted to make my first real game. Maybe first original game is a better term. One that wasn't a copy of a tutorial and had more than one level. I was still struggling with a lot of the basics, so I came up with a concept that only needed the player to run and jump. I was watching a lot of Mario Maker videos at the time and thought I could make a tough platformer with a short time limit, so I got to work on that. It was also around this time that I found Tim Rustwick's YouTube channel and the Game Dev Underground community. They were all about encouraging and wanting other people to finish their projects and really help motivate me. I finished my first game called Don't Explode, using the same character but making a different tile set, and I posted it on itch, which was absolutely terrifying. Then, to my surprise, within a couple of days, a video was linked in the comments of someone on YouTube playing and raging at my game. It was hilarious and gave me a huge vote of confidence that I could make something fun. As an experiment, I'm currently in the process of remaking Don't Explode to see how far I've come as a game designer. Make sure to subscribe to see that video when it's ready. After being encouraged by the Game Dev Underground community, I realized I needed to stop working in a silo. I had heard about game dev meetups, so I looked one up, and lo and behold, there was one happening not too far away from me. Now, I have really bad anxiety, especially when I'm doing something for the first time, to the point where I was considering not going to this meetup even when I was sitting in the parking lot of the venue. I forced myself to just go in and see how it was, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I had intended on lurking in the background, but I was encouraged to show what I had been working on. I was told that I was making great progress, had some neat ideas, and given some feedback to help improve. It was awesome. Thank you to Tony and everyone else at OC Indies. You guys are all amazing. That meetup changed everything for me. I had a new invigoration to learn because I wanted more feedback. I began my first prototype for what would eventually become Monkeys with Guns specifically to bring to the next meetup after the first. I know, I'm extremely lucky to live where I do and have this community. If you don't have that near you, I'm sorry, I wish you did. I joined a 12-hour game jam that was put on by some of the other members a couple weeks later. It was my first game jam and I was terrified. My plan was to just be an artist, but there were already too many. So I volunteered that I could code a game by myself since no one else used my engine, and use a couple of the artists. That way we would be able to have another team. Coding a game alone is tough. Doing it in 12 hours is crazy. And it gave me the same rush as that first time I made that box flap. Just pure amazement that I was able to make this. And that kicked off a game jam addiction that's just been a whirlwind of making and learning. I did 13 game jams in the 12 months that followed my first. I fell in love with getting feedback. After game jams, I would find streamers that were playing games from the jam and submit my game to be played. I found so much value by watching the faces of players and what they did, more so than what they actually said about the game. I tried to empathize and feel their frustrations at things that I thought were clear, and their annoyance when something had to be done just right to work. During this time, I was developing Monkeys with Guns by making some changes, then every month bringing it to our meetup and seeing what changes were good and what were bad. Repeat. I was able to demo the game at a few local conventions and playtest nights, which, if you ever get the opportunity, say yes. I learned so much from demoing that will basically be its own video someday. This is also around the time that I started making devlogs, and everything after that is pretty much here on this channel. And that's my story so far. 4 years in, and I've made amazing friends, seen incredible projects, and learned more than I ever thought I could. This is by far the best hobby and community that I've ever been part of, and I'm humbled that others enjoy the work and content that I'm creating. Thank you all very much for watching. I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my patrons, especially Abishan, Adam Edwards, David Scott, MLK, Ragnabro, Scott Hansen, and Soapy Gnome. You're all awesome people, and I truly appreciate the support. And a final thank you to the sponsor of this video, Core. Don't forget to check it out. It's completely free and a great way to create something you can interact with. Just click the link in the description. If you'd like to play any of my games, you can visit vimlark.itch.io. To get in contact with me, you can stop by my Twitch streams where I'm always doing something related to game dev or pixel art. Message me on Twitter, or join the Discord with a lot of other really cool people. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And I will talk with you next time. Have a good one. Later.